Now, as I was just saying that, with 46 touchdowns now, passes for Matthew Stafford, that's good enough to tie him for 7th all-time in NFL history for most passing touchdowns in a single season. Welcome to Just the Stats, NFL Top 10's for Wednesday. I'm Ernie Jennings, your host, and we have a good show today. We're going to talk about a few more games that were from Sunday, and then we're going to look at the power rankings after the end of the season and going into the playoffs. Top 10 teams for the end of the season. And we do have a newcomer on the list and a team that did drop out. So we'll look at that. Looking forward to the playoffs, honestly. Can't really help it since the Jaguars haven't been in the playoffs. It's just exciting to have a season where they're part of that. And I always say that, I know, but just the way it is, I guess, when you, unlike some of the teams, even the Bills, who the Jaguars are playing, they're in the playoffs every year, so they fully expect it. This was an interesting season for the Jaguars. I mean, they were only 4-13 last year, so a lot of people thought, as I did, hey, they go 500 or better, 9-8 or something like that, 10 tops, and it's a good season. Well, they really outdid that for sure. But anyway, enough about the Jaguars. You're here to hear about other teams, other games, not just the Jaguars. So let's get going with this, and we'll start with the Arizona Cardinals coming to the LA Rams SoFi Stadium in Inglewood, California. Now, this game, when you just look at the score, the Rams won this game 37-20. Now, you would have thought, wow, they just blew them out. But that's not the case at all. This was a close game until the fourth quarter. And in fact, only until the end of the third quarter did the Rams, they had lost the lead, and they got the lead back at the end of the third quarter, and then they just pulled away in the fourth quarter. But going into toward the end of the third quarter, the Cardinals were winning this game 20-16. Unfortunately for the Cardinals, 20 points was all they were going to get. And then the Rams proceeded to score 3 touchdowns to pull away 37-20, pardon me. Now, when you look at the game, as I said, the Rams, I thought they were a much better defense than they've been playing. And so in this game, the Rams had 395 yards of offense to 317 for the Cardinals. Much more than I would have expected. That was one of the biggest stats, along with the time of possession. Now, the Rams did have the ball for 32 minutes plus to less than 28 for Arizona. And the Rams were able to run 72 plays to only 53 for the Arizona Cardinals. So that's a big difference there as well. And as usual, third down and fourth down conversions were one of the keys in this game. For Arizona, if you combine the third and fourth down conversions, they were 5 out of 13, which is less than 50%, more about 40. While the Rams were 10 out of 17, which is well over 50%, closer to 60. So that was a big difference right there in that category. Now, Jacoby Brissett, who has slowed down from earlier in the season when he took over, he did go 22 completions on 31 attempts. That's a pretty good there. 243 yards, almost 8 yards an attempt, 2 touchdowns, 1 interception, but he was sacked 6 times in this game. That really hurt. And had a quarterback rating of 101.9. Now, Matthew Stafford had another good game. 25 completions on 40 attempts, 259 yards. That's 6.5 yards an attempt. 4 touchdowns again. Wow. He pulled himself into the top 10 all-time in touchdowns in a single season with this performance. and it might have pushed him over the top as MVP for this year. We'll have to see. It's going to be a close race, but we'll see what happens in that pretty soon here. He's only sacked one time, had a quarterback rating of 114.5. Now, Arizona, they can't run the ball. I mean, they ran it well. Average-wise, they just only ran it 15 times. And that's despite the fact, like I said, they were in this game all the way through the third quarter. But Michael Carter had the most carries, 7 carries for 18 yards. Amari DeMarcado had 2 carries for 29. That was the most yardage for any player on the team, only 29 yards. Now for the Rams, Kyron Williams, 12 carries, 60 yards. That's 5 yards a carry. And Blake Corum had 13 carries for 59 yards, so they basically split this pretty close. That's 4.5 yards a carry for Blake Corum. They ran the ball 31 times total for 143 yards. That's 4.6 yards of carries. Arizona on the passing game, Trey McBride again, 7 catches, 65 yards. Michael Wilson came in and is really starred now. He's 5 catches for 99 yards, including a 43-yard touchdown bomb. And then Josiah DeGaro had 2 catches for 15 yards and a touchdown. I mentioned him. Now, Puka Nacua, 10 catches, 76 yards, 1 touchdown. Tyler Higbee, 5 catches, 91 yards, and a touchdown. And then Colby Parkinson, 4 catches, 36 yards, and 2 touchdowns. So those 3 players really racked up some good yardage and touchdowns. Now, Kyron Williams had 3 catches for 21 yards to go along with his 60 yards rushing, so he had 81 yards total offense. All right, now looking at some of the numbers, Trey McBride had already grabbed the most receptions in Arizona Cardinals history for a single season. He had hit the 119. He had passed DeAndre Hopkins last week. Well, with this, another 7 catches, it just pushes that total out there even farther. Now has 126 receptions this year, which is the all-time record for the Arizona Cardinals for receptions in a single season. Now looking at the Rams side of it, Matthew Stafford. With another 259 yards, he ends the season with 4,707 yards, which is the 3rd best total ever for the Los Angeles Rams as far as passing yards in a single season. Quite a year for him. It really was. I do believe he's going to end the season as the most yards passing because Dak Prescott, who was with him, only had 70 yards in his game. They pulled him at halftime. Now, Matthew Stafford, like I said, another 4 touchdowns. Last week, he had taken over the lead all-time in passing touchdowns for a single season for the Los Angeles Rams, beating his own record of 41. He had gotten to 42 last week. So with another 4, he's up to 46. So that is the new standard for the Los Angeles Rams, 46. That's impressive. I've mentioned it before, but the record is 55 by Peyton Manning, and only 3 times has a player passed for 50 or more touchdowns. So 46 is really incredible. Now, as I was just saying that, with 46 touchdowns now, passes for Matthew Stafford, that's good enough to tie him for 7th all-time in NFL history for most passing touchdowns in a single season. Manning's number 1 with 55, as I mentioned. He did that in 2013. He broke the record that Tom Brady had set in 2007 with 50. Broke it by 5. 55 touchdowns in 16 games. You're talking more than 3 a game. Matthew Stafford, really it was just under 3 a game, but it's an incredible number. Peyton Manning holds 2 of the top 4. The only other player was Patrick Mahomes, who threw 50 touchdown passes in 2018. And when we look at the, speaking of Tom Brady throwing 50 touchdown passes in 2007, We're going to look at the New England Patriots here in a second, and I found that kind of interesting, the fact that he threw those 50 touchdown passes. Also of interest here, Matthew Stafford's on this list. As I said, he just made it onto the list. He's number 7 all time. Aaron Rodgers is on this list twice as well, another active player. All right, now looking at the Rams as far as receptions go. Puka Nacua for the Rams with those 10 receptions now has 129 on the season, actually more than even Trey McBride. Now, 129 is good enough to be second all-time in Los Angeles Rams history in receptions for a single season. The record holder is Cooper Kupp, who in 2021 had 145 receptions in a season. So came up a little short of him. Now, Puka Nacua did miss a game as well, but still 145 is way out there. That's second best, I think, behind only Thomas for the Saints, who had 149 receptions in a single season. But Puka Nacua is just an incredible player. Now, I hope he continues to play that well. You know, Cooper Kupp was amazing too. And then, boom, just 1 year to the next year, and he's not the same player anymore. It's just crazy how that can happen. All right, so now with 129 receptions for Puka Nacua, that put him at tied for 7th as well, all time in NFL history for most receptions in a single season. Tied Antonio Brown for the Steelers, who did it in 2014. They both had 129 receptions. That's really amazing. Also on this list of top 10 all-time in receptions is CeeDee Lamb, who in 2023 had 135. And then Jamar Chase had 127 just last year, which is good enough to tie for 10th with Stephon Diggs, who had 127 with the Bills in 2020. And then Justin Jefferson had 128 for the Vikings in 2022. I just mentioned these are all players currently playing. And Cooper Kupp obviously still playing as well. A lot of players in the top 10. What is that? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 of the top 10 are active players. Just shows you how the league goes lately. All right, now in receiving yards, that is, for the Los Angeles Rams, Puka Nacua ended the season with 1,715 yards, which is good enough for 3rd all-time in Los Angeles Rams history, only being topped by Isaac Bruce in 1995, who had 1,781, and Cooper Kupp in 2021 had 1,947, only a couple of yards behind the all-time record held by Calvin Johnson for the Lions. All right, now receiving touchdowns. Boy, Davante Adams had this wrapped up until he got hurt and missed the last 3 games. He was at 14 receiving touchdowns for the Rams. The record was 17, and he had 3 games to go. So he ends the season at 14, which is good enough for 3rd all-time in Rams history as far as receiving touchdowns go. And possibly the beneficiary of that was Puka Nacua, who did have another touchdown. He ended the season with 10 receiving touchdowns, which is good enough to be tied for 8th all-time in Rams history in receiving touchdowns in a season. So you got 2 players from this season in the top 10, Davante Adams and Puka Nacua. Really good seasons for them. All right, let's move on to that next game I was talking about, the Miami Dolphins coming to New England. And honestly, I thought this was going to be a better game because the Miami Dolphins played Buffalo Bills pretty evenly. They beat them once, and then I just thought it would be a closer game, and it wasn't. The Patriots win this game 38-10. Now, Tua Tagovailoa wasn't playing. He had been benched. I don't know. It was just a game that, it wasn't that bad. At halftime, it was 17-10. in favor of the Patriots, but then they just put it on them in the second half, and it just blew them out off the field there. And as they always say, Miami does not like going up north in the winter, and maybe that was an effect as well. For looking at some of the numbers, total net yards, New England 457, Miami 180. Also, A-Chain was not playing for Miami either. That's another negative for them. He's their best player. Waddle wasn't playing either, so I guess they figure there's no point in playing some of these players if they had any type of injury at all. Rushing yards, New England, 243 rushing yards, 63 for Miami. Looking at some of the other numbers here, time of possession was pretty much even, almost 31 for New England, 29 for Miami. Let's look at some of these players. So for Miami, they played Quinn Ewers, 16 completions on 23 attempts. Not bad. Only 137 yards for a 6-yard average. That's not bad, really. 1 touchdown, 1 interception, sacked 4 times. Quarterback rating of 81.2. Now, Drake May, 14 completions on 18 attempts, so only 4 incompletions, 191 yards, not a lot, but 10.5 yards per attempt with those 14 completions or 18 attempts. 1 touchdown, no interceptions, was not sacked, had a quarterback rating of 129.4. This is going to be interesting to see the MVP voting. Like I was saying, it's Stafford and May, I believe, are the top 2. And I'm not being a homer here, but Trevor Lawrence, if he'd have just started this much earlier, his last 6, 7 games have been MVP caliber. The last 6 games, he's got like 19 touchdowns and 1 interception. His quarterback rating has been consistently well over 100. But as I said, that wasn't the case the first half of the season. And so when you throw that in there, and I'll go with the smaller market, less seen type of thing, he won't. He's going to get votes, because when they vote on this, I think they vote their top 5 or something like that. So he'll get votes at some level, but it's really going to be between May and Stafford overall. Maybe a few votes thrown in for somebody like Myles Garrett because of the sack, breaking the sack record. Smith-Njigba for all the yards he racked up receiving, but they won't. Neither one of them should make it, or probably won't make it, mostly because they're not a quarterback. It's really often a quarterback award. All right, looking at the rushing for Miami, 13 carries for Jalen Wright, only 23 yards. For New England, Ramon Stevenson, he broke off right in the beginning of the game, but he had only 7 carries for him, 31 yards though. One of them was a 56 yards. He had 2 touchdowns. Trevion Henderson, 13 carries for 53 yards. That's over 4 yards a carry. And he had 2 touchdowns as well. And then Drake May, for good measure, threw in 5 carries for 41 yards. Receiving for Miami, nobody had more than 3 catches. And these were just a lot of backups for them, really. Malik Washington did have 3 catches for 6 yards, but one of them was a touchdown. Now for the Patriots, Hunter Henry led the team with 5 catches for 56 yards. And then Stephon Diggs had 3 catches for 43 yards. And Stevenson, again, 2 catches for 22 yards, and one of those was a touchdown. So for him, he had 3 touchdowns in this game, and he had a total of, 153 yards of offense on only 9 touches. That's really good, honestly. They got quite a backfield, and I don't know how it's going to work out for next year for them. But, man, between Stevenson and Trevion Henderson, who has taken a little bit longer, I think, to grasp the offense for the Patriots, but give him another year and he should be pretty good. He's so fast. Let's move on to some of the stats. Now for Drake May, he ended the season with 4,394 yards, which is good enough to put him into 8th all-time in passing yards in a single season for the New England Patriots. Tom Brady, did have 9 of the top 10. Now Tom Brady has 8 of the top 10, and he has the top 5. Looking at Drake May, he had another touchdown pass, so ended the season with 31 touchdown passes, which was good enough to tie him for 8th all-time in touchdown passes for the New England Patriots in a single season with 31. He tied Babe Parilli, who did it in 1964. So this is what I was talking about. This is interesting to me. Tom Brady in 2007 threw 50 touchdown passes, which is tied for second most all-time in a single season. But then his next best season was in 2011 when he had 39. 11 touchdowns difference. He never threw more than 39 touchdown passes again for the Patriots. I mean, he had 50, 39, and then he had a couple seasons with 36, 34, 33, 32, and 29. So he holds the record for most passing touchdowns in a career. But obviously, it's just the consistency and the longevity. It's something similar to Jerry Rice, who doesn't necessarily hold the most receptions in a single season type of record, and in fact never had more than 122 receptions in a season, and only had, I think it was only out of all the seasons he played, only like 3 or 4 seasons where he had 100 receptions. But he played so long that he holds all the records for most passing or most receptions. And it's the same thing with Tom Brady, who holds the touchdown passing record, the most passing yards in a career record. It's just the longevity. He played a lot longer than Peyton Manning or Drew Brees did. It's good for him that the way he was able to do that, stay healthy like that and be able to play consistently for such a long period of time. Now, looking at passing touchdowns in a career, as I was mentioning, Tom Brady's number 1 with 541. And then Steve Grogan, who played in the 70s up in the 80s, has 182. That's number 2. But Drake May now, with one more, has 46. He's got a long way to go. But he's got 46, which ties him with Mac Jones for 7th all-time in most passing touchdowns for the New England Patriots in their careers. He's going to be on that team for a long time. I mean, he's so good. It's only his second year. So that's what's amazing. It's his second year, and he's in a stiff competition for MVP of the NFL. Only his second year. That's impressive. I mean, he's really good. I love to watch him. He kind of reminds me, honestly, of Josh Allen in the sense that he does what he needs to do, and he doesn't have a elite wide receiver staff. So sometimes there's a more scrambling involved to wait for somebody to get open, or he just runs it himself. But he's very accurate. He can throw the ball a mile if he needs to, and he loves to do that. But he's really a great player, and I don't see him ever, being nothing other than the quarterback for the Patriots for many, many years. Now, also for the Patriots in rushing yards, Ramondre Stevenson now has 3,669 yards, which moves him into 5th all-time in rushing yards for the New England Patriots. He passed Kevin Falk, who played in the 1999 to 2011. Sam Cunningham, who played in the 70s and early 80s, only has 5,453 rushing yards, which is good enough to be number 1 all time. Now, the next game, we'll go on to this last game we've got, the Washington Commanders visiting the Philadelphia Eagles. Wow, what a game this was. You really would have thought the Eagles wanted to play this game and win it, but they didn't seem to care where they finished, whether they knew they were having home field at least once, but they had a chance to be the number 1 seed just by winning this game, but they didn't play their starters, so not a lot to say about that. The Commanders actually win this game 24-17. It was a fairly close game till the fourth quarter when the Commanders scored 14 points and the Eagles nothing. And so the Commanders came back and won that game. Now looking at the numbers, pretty even. 307 yards for the Eagles, 274 for the Commanders. It was kind of a reverse game where the Eagles had 80 yards rushing to 143 for the Commanders, and then only 131 passing yards for the Commanders to 227 for the Eagles. Problem for the Eagles here, which probably hindered them in some ways, was penalties. 9 penalties for 123 yards. That's never helpful. And they only had the ball less than 26 minutes to 34 minutes for the Commanders. Now, Josh Johnson was the quarterback for the Commanders. He had 14 completions on 22 attempts, 131 yards, had a quarterback rating of 76.1. Tanner McKee for the Eagles was the quarterback. He had 21 completions on 40 attempts, so just over 50%. 241 yards passing, had a touchdown and an interception, had a quarterback rating of 68.9. For the Commanders, rushing was Rodriguez, had 16 carries for 65 yards, a little over 4 yards a carry. Josh Johnson, 9 carries for 45 yards. And Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt had 13 carries for 29 yards. Not too good there. They ran the ball 41 times for 143 yards. It's only 3.5 yards a carry. Did have a couple of touchdowns. Rodriguez and Johnson had touchdowns. Now, for the Eagles, Tank Bigsby, 16 carries for 75 yards and a touchdown. Figured he'd have a pretty decent game with Barkley not playing in this game. Other than that, that was pretty much it. Terry McLaurin, 4 catches for 57 yards. John Bates, 2 catches for 13 yards and a touchdown. I mean, 4 catches for 57 yards was the most receptions and yards by far. And the same for the Eagles. A bunch of people caught passes. Really, wow. 2, 4, 6, 8, 9. 9 players had a pass thrown their direction and a reception. And the most was Kylan Granson, had 4 for 30 yards. That was it. Grant Calcaterra had 2 catches for 21 yards and a touchdown. That was the receiving touchdown. So that was it for that. Looking at some of the numbers here. Looking at tackles for loss in a career. This is the only thing we're going to look at in this entire game. Von Miller. Now, with one more tackle for loss for the Commanders, has 177, which ties him for 4th with Levante David for 4th all-time in NFL history in tackles for loss. So you're looking at this list here, the top 10. Terrell Suggs has 202. He's the NFL leader in tackles for loss for a career. Calais Campbell for the Cardinals has 196. He's 2nd. And then you have David and Miller, who are tied for 4th. You also have Cameron Jordan, who made it into the top 10 this year, tied for 7th with Julius Peppers with 175. Now, what's interesting about this is how many of these players are going to be around next year. Calais Campbell's been in the NFL since 2008. And then Von Miller and Cameron Jordan have been around since 2011. And Levante David since 2012. So these guys, even though there are 4 of them in the top 10 all-time in tackles for loss, they're all been around a long time. It'll be interesting to see if I'm pretty sure at least one of them will retire, and we'll see how many do retire. But they're all bound for the NFL Hall of Fame at some point. All right, let's look at the top 10 rankings here, power rankings after week 18. All right, I believe that Seattle Seahawks, and I do think they're number one. I put them at number one when I first did it. It was just based on the fact that they had the best record, and some of the other teams ahead of them had kind of fallen off. But the way they've handled the Rams, the way they've been on this winning consistently, they ended the season with a record of 14-3, same as the Patriots, but the Seattle Seahawks have played a much more difficult schedule. And when you think about it, I mean, from their division alone, the Seahawks, the Rams, and the 49ers are all going to the playoffs. These are teams that Seahawks had to play, twice a year, the other two teams. So they ended up with a 14-3 record. They're number one seed going into the playoffs, so they have a bye coming up. They are really set to possibly make it to the Super Bowl. They're that good. Their defense is really excellent. Their running game, sometimes I wonder about their offense, but they do have one of the better offenses as well. And sometimes it's passing, sometimes it's running. Got a couple of good running backs with Walker and Charbonnet, and then Sam Darnold, who that's the catch for me. I'm not completely convinced on him, but you can't get past the fact that they have a really good record. And they have come back from some games where they were losing, in fact, and came back and won. Now, number 2, New England Patriots, 14-3, the same as the Seahawks. But like I said, their schedule has been much easier this year than the Seahawks. Jacksonville Jaguars, 3rd. They're 13-4. What a season they've had. And I've just gradually moved them up as other teams have lost. They play Buffalo in Jacksonville this Sunday, so that'll be a huge game because I have Buffalo here at number 6. Jacksonville Jaguars, number 3. Number 4, Denver Broncos. They're 14-3, same as the Seahawks and the Patriots. But Broncos lost to the Jaguars in Denver. Broke the Denver Broncos. They had won like 10 games in a row. While they do have a great defense, their offense to me is a little bit more questionable. Bo Nix is a young second-year quarterback, and I think that might be playing a factor as well. But they're still an excellent team, and they have a bye. Being the number 1 seed in the AFC, they have a bye this week too. So they'll be able to prepare for whoever they play, which will probably be Houston or Pittsburgh, depending on who wins that game. I do have Houston now at number 5. They've gradually moved up as well because of their winning streak. They have a 9-game winning streak. They play Pittsburgh at Pittsburgh in their game on, I think it's Monday night. So that's a big game. Houston Texans ended their season at 12-5. Now I got the Buffalo Bills at 6. I moved them way up. I had them at 10th, I believe. I moved them all the way up to 6th. Primarily because of the teams, the 49ers, the Bears, the Eagles all lost. And I do think all these teams, now these next teams I'm going to list, have issues. Even Houston does. The top 4 teams, the Seahawks, the Patriots, the Jaguars, and the Broncos, I think are fairly well balanced. Good offense, good defenses. Houston Texans, the best or the second best defense. But their offense is highly questionable. Then you got the Buffalo Bills, who I have at 6th. Though they got Josh Allen, their offense is powerful, but their defense is suspect. And then at number 7, I have them coming up out of, not even in the top 10, I have the Rams at number 7. I dropped them off this list after a couple of losses, but I still think they're one of the best teams. They're 12-5. They ended the season at 12-5. They play in Carolina. Their defense has been a suspect lately. I don't know why. I thought it would be a little bit better, but it's been their Achilles heel lately. So we'll see what happens there. Number 8, the San Francisco 49ers. I dropped them down 4 spots. They're 12-5. They play at Philadelphia. This is a team as well. Defense is probably one out of this whole list of teams in the top 10 I'm talking about have the worst defense. And it's mostly because they lost their two best defenders, and they just cannot keep healthy. But I have them at number 8, and offense is just fine. Purdy, you got McCaffrey. Now, Pearsall was out again. They can't keep the receivers on the field, but he should be back, hopefully. If they could just get everybody on the field at the same time, they might have a chance. But despite all these injuries they've had all season long, they ended the season at 12-5. Number 9, Chicago Bears, 11-6. I dropped them a couple of spots. They play Green Bay in Chicago. I have them at number 9. They're another team that I think their defense is suspect. I think that it's a possibility you can rattle Williams as well. They're one of my least favorite teams here, along with number 10, Philadelphia Eagles. As far as top 10 teams I'm talking about, teams that I think can make it all the way to the Super Bowl. The Eagles ended the season at 11-6 as well. They play San Francisco in Philadelphia. All season, their defense is good, but their offense has at times been actually really just bad. Their running game isn't as good as it was last year. Their passing game has been nowhere near the same. But at times, they do put it all together, and they seem to be able to win. And they have a strong defense, which is always key in the playoffs. So those are my top 10 teams. I honestly think the Super Bowl winner will come from one of the top 4, Seattle, New England, Jacksonville, or Denver. We'll see. If that's the case, that means that Seattle's going to the Super Bowl because the other 3 are all in the AFC. So the only team I think that has a chance to knock off Seattle would be the Rams. But we'll see when that gets to that point. But otherwise, right now, that's what it looks like. Seattle and either Patriots, Jaguars, or Broncos. That's my prediction right now. And obviously, I'm hoping it's the Jaguars. But we'll wait and see. Jaguars have a huge game against Buffalo. I mean, they got to get past them first. That could be the biggest hurdle they have making it to the Super Bowl is this first round game. All right, appreciate you listening. One thing I wanted to tell you was starting next week, we'll go from 5 podcasts a week to 3. Probably either Monday, Wednesday, Thursday, or Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, one of those. And we'll cover the playoffs, and we'll do this throughout the offseason as well. We'll have different things to talk about. I mean, the way the NFL is structured itself, we have, the playoffs and Super Bowl all the way up until February. Then we're talking about free agency. We're talking about the draft. We're talking about camps. So there's something to talk about. Top 10s I'll cover, all the way through the offseason until we get ready for the new season next year. But I don't want to rush it. But just letting you know that there'll be only 3 podcasts a week starting next week. All right. Please like and subscribe. You can find the podcast on Just the Stats NFL on YouTube. Same if you're listening to it, whether it's on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you listen to your podcasts. Please like and subscribe. I appreciate that. Thank you for the comments that come out, negative or positive. Especially negative if they're constructive. I like that. But of course, not as much as I like positive comments. All right. So for NFL top 10s for Wednesday, that is a wrap. I'll see you tomorrow.